Welcome to Arithmetic Fundamentals video, HP Prime Guide Fractions. Recently I got asked, how can I use the calculator? I came up with this example. If we had a recipe where we needed 2 2/3 cup, but we only wanted to make half of this recipe, we could take the 2 1/3 cup times 1/2 to get 1 1/3 cup. This problem is fairly easy, so we could have just done it directly. After we got the 1 1/3 cup, our cup was only in ounces. So then the next section on dominant measurements convert from cups to fluid ounces. So we did this conversion. It turned out that 1 1/3 cup turned out to be 10 2/3 fluid ounces. Then the question came up. The recipe called for 200 grams. We wanted to know the answer in the English system, not the metric system. We converted 200 grams to ounces. Came out to be this mixed numeral. By pressing enter twice, we could have where we could convert it to a decimal and compare the two. Here, the mixed numeral is of little use. This is of use to us because since this is so small, it came down to 7 ounces. It is true that calculations like this are generally done without the unit. For the convert command, we needed the unit, so that's why we put the unit in. In the next unit on dominant amounts, we will go into the convert command. Now let us return to our fraction unit and let's go back to our introductory section on fractions. Our diagram allows us to look at the relationship between halves, fourths, and eighths. Line A, B, C, D, E, F is divided into how many equal parts? 2, 4, and 8. How many eighths are there in 1/4 of an inch, in 1/2 an inch, in 3/4 of an inch? So when we're looking at 1/4 of an inch, we see that there are 2 eighths. When we're looking at 1/2 of an inch, we see that there are 4 eighths. When we're looking at 3/4 of an inch, we see that there are 6 eighths. We assumed that the diagram was inches, but technically there are no units attached with this diagram. Let's look at the definitions. The number of parts of fraction is divided into form the denominator. The number of units taken to make a fraction is called the numerator. A fraction whose numerator is less than its denominator is called a proper fraction. Thus, 1/2 and 3/4 are proper fractions. A fraction whose numerator is equal to or greater than its denominator is called an improper fraction. Thus, 4/4 and 5/4 are improper fractions. A number made up of a whole number and a fraction combined is called a mixed numeral. Thus, 2 1/2 means 2 plus 1/2 is a mixed numeral. Let's look at equivalent fractions. When we multiply the left side of an equality by 1, the equivalents are like 2/2 is 1, 4/4 is 1, and 8/8 is 1. We come up with higher terms for fractions. When we divide by equivalents with 1, 2/2, 4/4, and 8/8, people generally do this, but they did not realize that this was a rule. We come up with the answer in reduced form. Our textbook labels both these as reduction, so this seems a little strange to us, but again, this textbook was from the early part of the 20th century that we're using for our exercises, so they called this changing from higher terms and to lower terms, both of it they call reduction. Let's look at the answers to these 8 problems. This would be 2/2, so this answer would be 2. This would be 4/4, so this answer would be 4. This would be 2/2, so this answer would be 2. This would be 8/8, so this answer would be 8. This would be 4/4, so this answer would be 4. This would be 1/4, so what we would want would be 2/2, so this answer would be 2. This would be 2/2, so this answer would be 4. This answer would be 2/2, so this answer would be 6. Let's clear our calculator and look at how we can use it to come up with the answers. In part 2 of the whole number video, we would hit the toolbox Then we'd hit the CAS and we go up to solve. The problem is that the solve command does not work. We were able with the integer and with factors and factor lists to use the CAS inside of the home, but we are unable with solve to use the solve function inside of the home. We will have to switch it over to CAS. Let's go ahead and see how we would solve 1 equals x over 2. So we're in CAS, hit our toolbox, we want solve, and we want solve. Then we say 1, we need the equal, x over 2, so we can use divide. For x, we can use our x, t, theta, n. Then we hit divide, 2, press enter, and we get the answer to be 2. Now this is a lot of trouble. It was easier just to work these problems directly. Next we look at these 8 problems. 8 over 8, so this is 1. 2 over 2, so this is 1. 4 over 4, so this is 1. 2 over 2, so this is 2. 2 over 2, so this is 1. 4 over 4, so this is 2. 2 over 2, so this is 1. 2 over 2, so this is 3. So what we were doing, every one of these numbers, we were dividing both of these by these numbers, and we came up with these answers. Demonstrating this last problem using CAS Solve, the computer algebra system. Toolbox, solve, solve. We want 6 over 8, so 6 divided by 8. Move it out of the denominator, so we'll use the pad here. We need to equal. We want x, so we use the x, t, theta, n button. Divide. 4. Press enter. And the answer turns out to be 3. Notice that it gives the answer in the list with the braces around it. This ends our coverage of this page on introductory exercises and definitions. We have moved to the addition and subtraction page, cleared our calculator, and entered all these values into our calculator. Let's look at our calculator to see how these operations work. If we highlight the first answer and press our ABC button, we will see that we have switched the answer to a fraction. We press it again, we switch it back to a decimal. If we go to the second answer in our history and press the ABC button, we switch it to a decimal, press the button again, switch it to an improper fraction, press the button again, switch it to a mixed numeral. Do the same thing with our repeating decimal here. Highlight it, switch it to a proper fraction. Our last answer here, if we press the ABC button, switch it to a mixed numeral, switch it to a terminating decimal, and switch it back to an improper fraction. Let's go down to the command line here. And when we move down to the command line, we have written it without parentheses. And when we press enter, we come up with this answer. We will press the ABC button and see that it is not the correct answer, because what we have done is subtract 25 from the first mixed numeral, not 25 and 5/8. So for this to be correct, we would need to put parentheses around this part. So let's move it down So we'll hit it, then we'll copy it. We need to have the second part with parentheses, so we'll backspace. Put in parentheses, put in 25, put an add sign. We can do the fraction by using the divide key, so we'll press 5, divide, and put in 8. We could have also used the template key up here, but we chose to use the divide key instead. We will press enter. We will hit our ABC button and see that we end up with the correct answer now. But for clarity situations, we like to put the parentheses around both parts, even though it was only necessary for the second part. For the tutorial, we prefer to use the home. Here is the computer algebra system. Let's look at what's going on a little bit with the computer algebra system and the home when we enter fractions. If we entered the fractions into the computer algebra system, the default is to come up with the exact answer, so it comes up with an improper fraction. We're going to take a look at switching it over to a decimal. We just want to show you what happens when you don't use the pad. So if you have 9/16 and you hit the plus sign, you end up getting something that won't work. So you will have to backspace out of this, and then you'll have to use your pad before you go on. Let's work a little bit in the computer algebra system. So let's hit the add, and then let's put 27, divide, 40. Instead of pressing enter, there's an approximate symbol here. So if we hit shift and enter, we get the approximate answer. We get the answer as a decimal. If we hit our ABC button, it converts it over to an exact answer. Here we were working slightly different, and we were using the approximate button, and we ended up okay with 90/80. This is why we like to use the home screen, because with the home screen it just toggles between all the different ones. It doesn't have this where it converts and puts it on a separate line. As we stated before, you only need to put the parentheses around the second part because you want to subtract the 25 and 5/8 from this part. We prefer to put parentheses around both parts just to be on the safe side, so we have entered this into our command line. When we press enter, look what happens. It ends up writing the answer without the parentheses on the first part. The CAS version always tries to get rid of extra symbols in there. Sometimes this happens on the home, sometimes it doesn't. We don't know exactly why this happens and why it doesn't happen. Here in our example, it showed it with the extra parentheses still being there. Let's solve a problem. If a man owes $37.50 and gives me three $10 bills and $1.34 worth of quarters, how much does he still owe me? The easiest way to do this is to do part of the problem in our head. So to take the 37.5 and subtract from it 31 3/4 so that he still owes me $5 3/4. If we use nested parentheses, we can put parentheses inside parentheses, so we can put the 30 plus 1 3/4 and subtract it and come up with our answer. The other way is to break it into two parts. Take the 37.5, subtract 30, get that answer. When we copy that answer over, it converts it to a decimal, and then we subtract a 1 3/4. Again, with the ABC in the home button, we can switch it over to the form that we prefer. So we preferred all these answers in fraction form. This ends our addition and subtraction page discussion. We have switched over to the multiplication and division page and cleared out our calculator. Let's go back to the home part of our calculator. And let's clear this out. I'm interested in what's going on a little bit with this second entry. So let's go over to our calculator, hit parentheses, 9 divided by 16, get the fraction in there, use the pad to move it out. We want to multiply. Let's put parentheses in again. 27 over 40. 27 divided by 40. We do not have to be outside when we press enter. We can be anywhere in the middle. So we press enter and we get this decimal answer. And then let's switch it over. So we switch it over to a fractional answer. It did keep the parentheses in both parts. Over here, we must have entered the first part without parentheses. I was just kind of interested in what was going on, whether it actually dropped the parentheses or whether we could keep the parentheses. Let's look at these division problems. So here we have a whole number divided by a fraction divided by a fraction divided by a whole number, and we have a mixed numeral divided by a mixed numeral. We had to continue it on to the screen for the actual application problem. So let's take a look at the very first entry over here in our calculator. 4 divide, then we have the fraction, so we'll put parentheses, and 3 divided by 8, and then we'll press enter. Then we'll switch this over to a mixed numeral and get the answer to be 10 2/3. Notice when we're doing division, all the problems that we do with division, the parentheses are dropped. I'm interested in this entry, a fraction divided by a whole number. Parentheses, 5 divided by 6, outside of the parentheses, divide, 2, press enter, switch our answer over, and we end up with the answer. Notice again that the parentheses are dropped, but we had to put the parentheses in when we entered it. So this would be true for all of the division problems. We won't work the rest of them out, but this would be true. We can see over here with multiplication when we needed to put in parentheses and when we didn't need to put in parentheses. We end this page and this video with the discussion of this problem. If a laborer was paid $200 for 1 1/4 days work, what would he be paid for 2 1/2 days work? This is a two-step problem, so we need to figure out what the dollars per day is. So it's 200 divided by 1 1/4. Then we need to take that answer and multiply it times 2 1/2 to get our answer for the problem. So that's what we see over here in our calculator. Another way to do this is to use the CAS version of your calculator and use ratio and proportions direct variation. When you're using ratio and proportions, the ratio of days is the same as the ratio of dollars. Then the product of the means is equal to the extremes. We need to solve this equation. We could get this answer by just taking 500 divided by 1 1/4 to get it turned out to be 400. Or we could go over to our CAS view of our calculator, hit our toolbox, solve, put the solve command in, write this directly into our calculator. So put 500 equals, parentheses for the mixed numeral. Let's go ahead and use the template because we haven't used the template at this point. So we're going to use the template to put in the 1 1/4. So we'll put in 1. We'll move with our pad. We'll put in the denominator, which is 4. we'll click back up here and go to our numerator, which is a 1. We'll click to get outside of it fast. In there, we want to take it times. We'll use our x t theta n key for x in our particular problem, and then we'll have to what happened to us was we got outside of our parentheses. We went too far, so we'll have to back out of this. We'll have to move inside here. We'll need to take it times, and then we'll hit our key for x, and then we'll press enter, and we'll get the answer to be 400. So this ends our discussion of fractions.